All right, we are live with. It's such an honor doing this. To have access to such amazing guests. These guys, you've both been on before. Rich Baris, People's Pundit Daily, the Big Data Poll, super duper pollster Nate, the lawyer who will debate with anybody, so I can put him up on the stand. And in the chat, we have Viva Fry. So this is what it feels like when streams start late. Yeah. Okay.
2 minutes, David. 2 minutes, right?
What are you gonna do? Everything is backward. So tonight we're not only going to do a post-mortem of 2020. By the way, did you guys check out that thumbnail? I'm really pleased with that thumbnail.
Oh yeah, and I'm the thumbnail game.
Love it. Love it.
I'm like,
I told Laura to step up our game after that thumbnail. I'm not kidding. I'm like, look, why do I have the same thumbnail all the time? Can we step the game up here? What is this?
Consistency. This guy in South Africa, Chad Lawrence, who did that, and it's, oh my God. And by the way, the one for Monday coming up with Carol Baskin. Ooh, I'm having problems with Chad because I'm like, oh, that's the best thumbnail ever. Wait. No, oh God. Yeah, I keep going back and forth. I cannot determine which is the best thumbnail ever that he did, but it's one of the two. So I appreciate it. This is gonna be fun, but it won't be the only thing we talk about. Now, to lay things up, all of this was inspired by Nate's Twitter feed. Mm-hmm. And for months now, Nate, you've had a pinned tweet.
Yes. My tweet is it's always pinned.
Yes. And I don't know if that's going to be until 2024 or just
until I remember to pin something else. To be honest with you, I just honestly forgot I pinned anything. So now it's like that's been like, and now every time I try to change it, it's like I'm like, married to it now. Like, oh, if I change it now, people are going to think something. So now I can't change it yet. So maybe after
that. Well, let me share it here because this literally is what inspired. You've had this up since like January or whatever, and I was like, okay, well, not everybody in our crowd agrees with everything that has happened in 2020, right? Mm-hmm. And you have a tweet thread essentially is saying, hey, everything was perfect. And maybe I'm pushing that a little bit, but it does feel like, oh, no problems, nothing to see here. Move on. And I do know that Rich Baris, well, he's a guy who actually did polls in many of the states, especially contentious states, probably the most accurate pollster of everyone. And he could address yes, no, maybe so. I really don't know, and I'm not trying to take a stance. I personally feel that every election has shenanigans going on, every one of them. Yeah, it's just a matter of a degree whether it actually affects results. Not, but there's always somebody playing, scamming. It could be leaving their ID at home. It could be faking, whatever. There's always something that's going to happen, and a lot of it's not necessarily nefarious. Is that fair, Rich? I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, I would say, look, when I started to look at this, first you have to sit out to debunk what people are trying to claim. You have to do that. You have to come at it from that point of view. Not that, I'm going to prove election fraud. You have to come at it. There were a lot of things on Twitter that just weren't true. And it takes a lot of time. It's exhaustive work. You have to go through record by record by record. And a lot of the information, unfortunately, was not available right away, as typical elections have been. But I would say that that's right. All elections have either, and I make the distinction between voter fraud and election fraud. Voter fraud is when an individual voter takes it upon themselves to do something wrong. Election fraud can be something a little bit more complicated and devious. For instance, like we saw the indictment in Philadelphia. In various wards, including election judges, et cetera, dating back to 2014, at least that they know of, up until 2016, where they had stuffed the ballots. Oh, no, it is 2018. Sorry. That they had stuffed the ballots. And, that's real. That happens. The question for me, though, was always whether or not it impacted the result. Was it so significant this time that it impacted the results of the election? And I have to tell you, I mean, after doing all of this work, this is what got me flagged by the police to begin with. I feel like they should, instead of, and even the audits that are going on right now, I don't find satisfactory. Signature verification was always the kicker, because that is what was different this time. That was not the same about vote by mail in previous elections. And I'm from Florida. We vote by mail a lot. Republicans, by the way, dominated vote by mail in a state like Florida. Things were different this time because in most of the cases, the ballot got the benefit of the doubt. And it was much, much easier to kind of look the other way. And also, as Barnes and I have said a million times, it was an outsourced job. You could easily outsource it. We got photos from I don't even know how many people, thousands, that are households that received ballots for people that are no longer there. We call that in this business, it's a change of address flag. They should not have received that. That's why it's important that somebody solicits the ballot on their own, because if the government just sends it out, then the records are so old, we call them dirty. They're so old that those ballots, even though everybody knows they're not eligible, will go out. Well, look at Reality Winner at the NSA hated Donald Trump so much he leaked information. It's very easy to see how somebody can make a leap to say, I got this ballot, no one's going to check, I think I'll mail it in. And that's ultimately what mostly we found. The dead voter thing, we did find dead voters. I got some of them right in front of me. I mean, they're on my desktop. I mean, we did find some, but not like the claims that you might have heard. We took the list. It was a big list at first. You have to whittle them down and do your due diligence. Everyone on the right wanted us to do this quick, Eric, because they're like, hurry up and stop Joe Biden. Everyone on the left wanted to just squash it. The truth is, it takes a long time to go through and say what's legit and what is not. And I think after all this time, I can say that there were more shenanigans than we've seen before.
Okay, now, Nate, I want you to state your case, and I'm going to say that you're probably a little on the other side of Rich, but I want you to put it out to get clarity on what you think happened, didn't happen, or if everything was perfect, or it was just a run-of-the-mill election, whatever you think.
Yeah, you framed my tweet, I think, in an interesting way, because I do not think this election was perfect. I think if somebody's out there saying that, they don't know what they're talking about, right? I don't think any election is perfect. And, with the anomalies of this election, I think obviously you're probably going to have more because you're in the middle of a pandemic, and let's just be honest. They tried to rush mail-in voting. Right?
Yeah,
a lot of the states were just like, we need to get people to vote. We don't want the people to come in. Let's just rush mail-in voting, and they did it a bad way. For instance, New York, and I don't think this is really. I think the problem is that people think of this as a Republican versus Democratic issue, and I don't think this is not that. It's an election integrity issue, and I've always believed that. We can both be on the same side of the same coin and say we want safer, fairer elections. Like, for instance, and I'll take the case of my own situation here in New York. My signature on that signature verification card here in New York is about 30 years old, from when I was like 18 going, right? My signature looks nothing like that at all today. Every document that I signed today is a different signature than what's on that ballot. It just is. So if somebody tried to match my signature today, even off my driver's license, with that signature, it's going to be wrong. That signature does not match. But it's me. And the state of New York didn't do the whole mail-in voting until, because obviously they wanted to they say Georgia should have mail-in voting, but it's not good for New York and the liberals. So I understand the political game. But so I think this was a whole rush. Now, my argument or my objection to the whole thing is that, yes, if someone says, do you believe there was voter fraud? Absolutely. Yeah, I believe there was voter fraud when Trump won, right? I know for a fact that there were more voters in certain counties than there were votes when Trump won. I know the same is true when he lost, right? So to me, it's not about if this happens, but like I think Rich was talking about size and scale. Is it enough to actually overturn the election results? Now, I will be sympathetic to the other side because I actually don't think there's really the other side. I will be sympathetic to the argument that because if you're changing the way you vote 2 months before the election and you got 100 million votes that got to go in, obviously you're going to have more problems now than than you did with a system that you've been using in the past, because this was rushed. So if we are saying that there were issues with this election, yes, of course there was. I just have not been convinced that there were enough issues to say that this election was rigged. Now, I'll also say my conclusion, is I've come to, is just by the cases in the courts from the various jurisdictions. Now, I'm not the one to say all the courts in every jurisdiction from Georgia to, to Michigan to Arizona are all corrupt and all judges who, there are levels to this game. And I think one of the things is that sometimes just go look at the cases. Like I remember when this first came out, the first thing was about was Sharpiegate, right? Everybody's pushing Sharpiegate, sure. Sharpiegate. Then you go and you find out that, matter of fact, they told you should use Sharpies to vote, right? That was totally debunked. But I kept getting people saying, well, the court never looked at it, right? The court. So that's why that tweet was saying, no, here's the actual facts of it. Here are all these cases, and here's exactly what the court said. Some were for standing, but some were just dumped, right? And my retort to anyone who says there's absolute proof that there was an election for it, there was enough to overturn the election. I said I would love to see it, and I would love to. And my objection is that why wouldn't the Trump campaign already bring that to court? Because in the United States, if you have evidence of something like that, right, of something that's so obvious, then I would suspect because we take it to courts and have it evaluated. That's where we judge evidence, right? You have juries, you have judges, you have law, and people judge evidence. You bring the evidence to the court, and you judge it, and they say, this is good, this is the standard, this is what happens. And that seems to not have happened in this case. So I'm not saying that there aren't issues. I'm not saying that these issues weren't massive in scale. I'm just saying that I've just not seen any evidence that's convincing that there's enough of this where I can call this election rigged. Because I will say this. The evidence that I've seen about this election, and the evidence that I've seen that says this election is rigged, I remember hearing these same arguments 4 years ago with Trump, and I can say, well, then was that election rigged also? And then I know Robert always says like there's a fundamental problem with elections being rigged even going back, and that just may be true. So I don't want to I don't want to make it seem like I'm fighting against Rich because Rich has the evidence and I want to debunk his evidence. No, if Rich has evidence, I believe him, right? I will believe it, and I want to believe it.
Can I jump in there, Nate? Can I jump in there real quick?
Sure.
All right, so I want to say something right off the bat that what you said, I think, is what I was trying to scream about, 60, 90 days before the election, which is that we're just not a system that was built to make changes like this, and especially state by state. And I think it's not, maybe it's some grand conspiracy, but generally that it was just that nothing government does moves that quickly. And when you do, you open it up, you expose it to, to being exploited. They I know a lot of these election workers, we spoke with them, we tried to track down these different ballots, and I'm going to read some of them in a second. They tried, a lot of these people really did try. They were totally overwhelmed and they had no idea. Now, I would say people like Jocelyn Benson, they're just liars. So the Secretary of State, I have evidence of her attempting to delete records for showing that she obtained absentee ballots that are illegal. And I have that record because we took screenshots of them. So, for instance, May Baker, right? Birth year 1920. Her obituary I can send to you. She returned a ballot on October 26, 2020 in Wayne County, Precinct 39. She died July 22nd, 2005. All right, that's a death. The death stuff we didn't see a whole lot of. What we saw a lot of were change of address flags. They have been gone for years. This guy, he lives in Indiana, all right? Raymond, right? He lives in Indiana. He was in Michigan in 2001 for 9 months, registered to vote, got a driver's license. When we called him, he said, I must have gotten registered when I got my driver's license. I don't remember, but he filled in a ballot apparently and sent it back in on October 17th. Precinct 141. And it's amazing because Republicans are so stupid. They focus on Wayne County and they're like, oh, it's the big urban county. This happened. We find this stuff everywhere. That's Michigan, but I can go through Georgia as well. It's not just Fulton County in Georgia. There were these, I think just what happened, honestly, Nate, and I can't tell people for sure that it would have been a different outcome because I don't know. I don't know what these ballots said. I don't know who they voted for. What I do know, though, is Kent County is supposed to be Republican 1. It was a terrible county in Michigan for this. We found people, and this is why I say it's labor intensive, folks, and it takes forever because I have to call these people. I don't even trust a call center to hire a call center and say, hey, can you read this script and tell me what the result? I just don't trust it. So, Eric, when I tell you it's Laura and I and one guy we hired, picking up the phone and calling line by line. I'm not kidding. That's why after the election, everybody saw me like, hey, it's the People's Pundit. I was so tired. I wanted to die. I wanted to go to sleep forever. Can we skip the show today? But I didn't because I wanted to know. But Nate, I don't know if it was just a bunch of people exploiting the system. I don't know if it overtook the election result. What I do know is states like, well, not states, but places like Fulton County and states like in Wisconsin and in Michigan, I eventually decided I'm going to hire an independent fraud guy, got somebody who does work for Wells Fargo and other corporate institutions. And I said, look, here it is. Go over my work. I'm done. It's a wrap. Tell me whether or not this is legit. Am I on to something? And he even suggested tools we didn't use because we have access to voter files. Apparently, it's stuff that fraud investigators use. Is numbers that are associated with them being a fraud investigator. You may know this, Nate. I don't, but apparently there's like a broker who has an SEC number or something. And as soon as they started to call, people started to clam up. And it was, this is a legitimate person. I mean, I could read you the results of his findings. He said, if I was hired, they basically said if we were hired by, an institution to do work to find, criminal intent or fraud of some sort, our next step, because we see evidence appears to be, not just disappearing. I mean, it's obvious. They just asked for it. And now those records are disappearing, which were public record that they call the FBI. So, and I got it. And that's why, Nate, I got to tell you, when you said of the court cases, sadly, of course you have the Trump campaign calling, you have everybody calling, John James in Michigan, a whole bunch of people calling me. Can you give me this? Would you sign an affidavit? And I'm like, look, I'll give it to you. What are you going to do? So you do. The judges were telling them, because I did say I would testify about what we found. The judges were saying, the election wasn't certified yet. You don't have standing. You haven't been injured yet. And then they would and then it would be certified, and they would basically tell them it's
too late now.
It's too late. It's too late.
Yeah, that they were playing a game, Nate. I got to tell you, it was a game, man. And if I was a judge, I kind of understand it, because if I was a judge, who wants to mess with the electoral process? Honestly, who wants to mess, especially the presidency or U.S. Senate seat? Who wants to do that?
Well, like for instance, with standing, not anyone can sue, even if you do have evidence, right? If I have evidence that there's election fraud in Alaska, I can't sue, right? I don't live in Alaska. So one of those voters would have to sue, and then they'd have to do that. So there are ways to get standing. And,
like candidate though, Nate? Can the candidate?
Yes, the candidate.
One thing you brought up earlier was all the court cases, but Rich can probably correct me. I know he knows them more. Trump himself and his campaign only had like one or two. There were like over 20 cases, but they were not.
Can I just be honest about something? They were all, and Nate, you're a lawyer. You'll appreciate this. Man, it was like, I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but it's the truth. They were totally clueless. Nate, they didn't have, and these are lawyers who are working for Trump. They were clueless. They didn't understand how basic things about elections. It was not a fair fight. So you have like Mark Elias and other people on the other side. Yeah. No, that's their fault, though. That is their fault. I'm not trying to say something's unfair. That was on them. And I told them, I'm not going to rush this investigation. I'm going to take my time. This is my name. This is my responsibility, my credibility. I can't help you because the judge gave you a date. I will tell them what I know right now, but it doesn't look like you really know how to even get in the court. And that, honestly, I mean, it was pathetic.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I know. I think there are a lot of because I know people now hate standing because standing has been this obstacle for all these lists. But people have to understand, as an attorney, if you don't take standing seriously and for your client, because standing is simply the plaintiff's been injured, the defendant that you're suing is the one that injured you, and the court that you're in can give you some type of relief, right? Can force that guy to pay you or whatever. And if they can't do that, then you're in the wrong court. It happens all the time. And if a lawyer doesn't follow that principle, right? If you go in without doing that, then you can be saying that's an ethics violation, right? You're going with a frivolous lawsuit. This guy, you're suing somebody. Like, I can't just sue Tom Cruise and say, the court said I don't have standing. It's unfair, because there's rules to this game. So I do understand the frustration. That now I would have to look into the particular, ruling and figure out why it's ethics. But I do want to go back to something that you said before, and you were bringing up the fact that of dead voters and people who moved, and I think all of that is absolutely true. I am not here to challenge any of that. I believe you, but I will say this: if I were to show you that let's say in Michigan, that there were more voters than votes in 36% of the precincts, you would say, well, yeah, that this is absolute proof that the election was rigged. But I can show you that, and I can show you that happened in 2016 with the Trump's election. I can show you how in Detroit, 36% of the precincts in Detroit recorded more votes than voters, right? And that's now I'll share my screen if you want, right? It was covered handsomely in the press, right? 2016 when Trump won. And that's when, everybody was saying, well, Trump, is Russian bots, this. How can you have more votes? And on top of that, he won Michigan, right? Because no Republican had won Michigan in almost since the 80s or something like that. So that was like, oh my God, he won this
1988.
State. Yeah, he won this state. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden, we have all these 36, you have all these counties with more votes than voters, right? So I do understand there are these anomalies, right? And that, I think, would qualify as election fraud, if anything else. Google it if anybody doesn't believe me, Google it.
I know what I do know what Nate's talking about, actually. I remember that.
So only thing I'm saying is that I agree. There are anomalies.
It could help Hillary.
I remember. Yeah, it could help Hillary. There are absolute anomalies. And I know a lot of people are probably going to be upset, whoever came here to try to see me argue with you. But I also agree with you is that I believe there were more anomalies in this election than any other one because of the change. But my disagreement is that I just haven't been convinced that there were enough to make me say, okay, this election was stolen in that way. And does that understand? Because I don't want to seem like I'm flip-flopping here, but I'm just being honest with my assessment. My assessment is I just haven't seen enough evidence.
Matter of degree.
I'm talking about degree, not
the matter of degree. Yeah, it happened, not enough to matter. I have a question for you, Nate, and because I want Rich to address it. Last time you were on last Friday, by the way, that's why everybody should subscribe. Help me get to 20,000. I'm getting close now. Nate was talking about China forcing people in the Midwest, and I don't remember exactly where it was. I don't know where it was, but that China was kind of putting pressure on the farming community and others that they have major investments in to essentially support Biden or maybe sit at home and not support Trump. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? And I'm asking it specifically. I will stop talking soon, I promise. I'm asking it specifically because I know Rich has brought up many, many times that there's 4 counties, I think it was in Iowa, who have determined every election since forever that, whoever wins those 4 counties wins that state, period, wins the election, whatever, and they all went for Trump. So, Nate, if you can go into that, and then I don't know if Rich has even heard of it, so that's why I wanted to put this out there.
I have actually. Go ahead.
Essentially, so just for everybody who hasn't heard what's going on, essentially, remember when Trump he instituted tariffs against China, and as retaliation, China did targeted tariffs on Trump voters. For instance, I think pork, soy, and so forth. And so, for instance, if the farmers wanted to sell to China, which was their biggest market, they then had to pay a higher price. So that was to punish Trump voters for Trump's tariffs. So what Trump did, then they did then Trump actually, I think he was trying to get them. Well, he did get them relief, right? I think they had the $1 billion plan to get them relief because of the tariffs. So that's what. So what I was talking about is the fact that China, that's election manipulation. That's you can't call it anything else. I don't know why the media isn't calling it that, but that's how much I think Trump got. Well, I think the media was so fixated on Russia, where China could do something so blatant like that, and they don't call it what it is. That is election manipulation. That is interfering. That's as much as you can interfere. They were hurting people's pockets deliberately to hurt Trump. So my argument is that if we are going to talk about election interference, we can't do it in such a political way in terms of when we see China doing something so blatant. the media seems to want to ignore that because it hurts Trump. But then when Russia does something that they feel will hurt, will hurt Trump, will help the Democrats, then it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm sorry, that's going to help Trump. Then the media's all over it. Oh, Russia's bad. So the 2 points that I wanted to make with that was, one, China was absolutely manipulating us and manipulating the election, and two, the media didn't want to say anything about it and didn't tell us about it in that way. They coached it in such a way that it made it seem like it was just something regular to do when it wasn't. It was manipulation of American votes through this tactic.
Yeah, can I say something about that, Eric? So
please.
Yeah, so I have heard about that. I do know what he's talking about, and it was like getting unclear. Iowa, when we were polling it, never really was close. I don't know where the media polling came from, but it was a matter of how much Trump would win it by and whether some of these counties would pivot back, because then that would tell us a lot about the Midwest and where different people were going. And by the way, talking about China manipulating before I even get into pivot counties, Charlie Gasparino got told the same story from Fox Business that I got told. Talk about Chinese manipulating. They pushed Joe Biden in the race to begin with through their Wall Street interests. Yeah, they did. And I can't believe Charlie Gasparino from Fox News. Charlie, you know we spoke to the same people because I'm calling you out. They told me what they told you, Charlie, which was that Joe wasn't even going to go. He felt like it wasn't up for it. And there wasn't a viable candidate later, and things just got, pushed more and more. And eventually they wanted Trump gone so bad that they settled for Biden, and they pushed him in. And they figured they probably had him. I don't know, things we know now, but they pushed him in. But yeah, in Iowa, it's so important, even though it's very white, because Iowa's not like the rest of them. It's very white. So you're looking at the Midwest states and you're thinking, well, Iowa doesn't tell us a lot about the rest of the Midwest, but it does, especially Wisconsin. Wisconsin and Iowa are different than Michigan and Pennsylvania because of their urban versus rural size. Yeah. And demographics, geography-wise, in the era of Trump, really was why we were more accurate than everybody else, along with other things, secret sauce I'm not going to talk about, but that's a big deal, and all these other guys, gentlemen, they just didn't get it. If you are a metro suburbanite, you are a lot different than a working suburbanite. It was totally different. And they didn't get that. And they just figured, well, it's suburban is suburban is suburban, or rural is rural is rural. That's not true. It's much different. And in Iowa, a lot can be told from that story. 31 pivot counties, the most out of any state in the entire U.S. Pivot meaning they pivot with the winner. All right. So Barack Obama carried them. Barack Obama did very well among these people. And they're, everything from farmers to students, working class. And Donald Trump flipped 31 of them. That's why we call them pivots in 2016. In 2020, not a single pivot county, even though those four you're talking about, Eric, they have a 100% track record over 6 decades, and the demographics have not changed that much. So I understand people who say, well, there's a first time for everything, and demographics change. I get that. They don't change that much in this area. It just doesn't happen. All right, Juneau County, Wisconsin, same thing. Very predictive county. Trump carried it with more than 60% of the vote. Yet he lost the state and the election. It's just so many of these things just don't make sense. But in Iowa, Biden didn't flip a single one. Only in 2 did he shift the needle a little bit. But then you saw the reason why it was only difference between 8 and 9 points between 2016 and 2020 is because some of around Des Moines went a little bit, more blue area got bluer, basically. That's it. It's not because the swing pivots swung back. And we see this everywhere. Trumbull County, Iowa, Pike and Vigo in Indiana, which is not a battleground, but Obama made it one. And in Vigo County, it has been a swing county since W. Bush. So it just doesn't make sense. In 2016, very demographically diverse. It was Trump plus 15. In 2020, it was Trump plus 15. Nothing about what they're asking us to do is swallow all of these first-time anomalies, these highly predictive, because polls are not that predictive and haven't been for a long time. They are not. They're a much more accurate predictive indicators. And what they want us to do is forget about all of those highly accurate indicators. They not only that they were all wrong for the first time ever, but they were all wrong at the same time for the first time. I mean, guys, I'm a statistician. I'm not a this is just bull, man.
Could you make that a similar argument for 2016 though? And
no.
I'm just, and the only reason why I'm asking
that's what
I remember like everybody going down to that last bit, Hillary's going to win, Hillary's going to win, and Trump. I called it. He caught it seemingly like an inside straight flush, right? He caught the three Rust Belt states, just enough votes, about 50,000 votes, and it was like, what was it, like an 8% chance of winning, and he hit it hard, right? He won it. So it's an anomaly. But my issue is, I think everything you're saying is honestly true, and it's concerning. But the question is that where we go from here, because I think right now the way we do elections is bull. It just is, right? It just is.
Yeah.
If when I go to the bank, I've never gone to the ATM and they give me and I take out $20 and it was like, oh, we're gonna give you $300, right? That's never happened to me before in my life, right? I don't know. Any of you? That's the most curious things that we could ever do.
When I go to your bank, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can I transfer my money there?
That's right. They give me $400 by accident. So if we have this great technology, we can send people to the moon. But we can't count votes, but you know why? Because it's political. In New York, it's the Democratic machine that wants to do it, and in other counties, it's something else. And that's what I think I think the problem is I do think there's a systemic problem, but I think the problem of us addressing it right now, because I want to address the problem, but I think the problem is that as soon as you say this is a systemic problem and we should address it, then it's, oh, you're a political hack, you're for this side, you're for that side. Instead of saying, well, no, here are the issues. The issues were in 2016. The issues were now magnified again in 2020. And I believe the issues will be magnified even further in 2024, because obviously when you have a problem that just continues, it's going to get even worse. And that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to say is that we have the problem, but how do we solve it? So next election will be more secure.
I'm going to hijack for a quick second because you prompted me with something Rich said. So, it's going to you, Rich. You're going to have the floor. But
I'm like,
Rich said this a while back, and it's, you know how you hear certain points and they just bing, bing, bing. It's like it's a broken record in your head. You'll never let it go. You had talked about how you had been speaking to a poll worker or somebody in a red state, like an extremely red state, like an R+20 or some crazy number.
31. Yeah, I mean 31. The county itself was 31. Yep, I do know where you're going. Yep, go ahead. Go ahead.
And this person was saying that even in this R+ infinity state, all the poll workers, all the volunteers, or the vast majority, were all Democrats.
Yep.
That they're very much into, shall we say, what is it Obama was? A community organizer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird, huh? And it is a very interesting thing that all the people who tend to work at the polls, who tend to do that, tend to be Democrat, even in Republican areas. And you had just talked about, Nate, about county and this and that and the machines. Well, yeah.
Well, that's like here in Harlem. All the officers at the police force tend to be Republican, right? So maybe some jobs just tend to get certain people
I think so. Yes.
Political persuasions. I think it's an interesting point, but I know like maybe like most of the so it happens. I don't mean to belittle a point, but I think it happens. I don't know why, but I think it's an interesting dilemma.
No, absolutely.
Republicans
tend
to have this. Yeah, Republicans tend to have this attitude where like the system will just like work for them. I'm serious, and I don't mean to be I'm not putting them down. It's just true. Like I can send my kids to school and they won't teach crazy theories that I don't agree with. I can say I can cast my vote and trust they'll count it. So it really is a naive. And honestly, this is the point I've tried to make to viewers. It's more than naive. It's honestly a little bit selfish and self-centered. So if you want the system to work for you, why are you not involved in it? So Democrats are much, much better. And what she had said to me, I'm telling you, Eric, what she said to me was, these people we're in a Republican heavy area. These people are Democrat, and they may be poll workers today, but Thursday, it's Tuesday. And on Tuesday is election day, they're poll workers. But on Thursday, they're Democratic activists, and this is and it is true because look, you don't have to go around, shake their hands and talk. You can tell, and she was like this little old lady who's been doing it for years. And she said, really, it's machine politics. If it changes, but right now that's the way it is. And Nate, where do we go from here? This is why I'm actually optimistic. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Black, White, Hispanic, Asian, blah, 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 blah. We poll these issues and Americans cannot understand why we can't count votes. And if we explain them, these in Georgia, they had that election bill that caused a lot of problems. Democrats called it Jim Crow 2.0. It was like we polled Georgia specifically on these issues. It was overwhelming. And they can't understand why there's not signature verification in a bipartisan light. Why is there not voter ID? Why,
can I
they're even more strict than that.
I just want to throw out one fact. Most people don't know this, but in the strictest voter ID states, there's more participation from African Americans.
Absolutely.
Than in the least one. That makes no sense. It's like everything that they've been telling us about this. Oh, you're gonna kill it, but there's more participation from African in the strictest states than it. It's like it destroys the narrative. But you know what happens? Most people probably even in this chat has never heard that. But that is absolutely true. And it just shows you how we've been so conditioned.
We got yelled at. She was in her 60s. I mean, I keep some of these because they're just so great, but Americans are funny. They're funny as they're unbelievable. But I think she was 64, African-American, Gwinnett County, Georgia, female. And we asked her about voter ID. All we want is a simple yes or no, or support or oppose. But there are always these certain respondents who give you, not their life story, but they give you a reason for that yes or no. Yeah, and she's like screaming at me, the hell's with some people? But I can't get a license? There's something wrong with me? I don't know how to get a driver's license. And I'm like, ma'am, so you're a support, ma'am. And you just want to move on. But it's so funny because the media does this to us. They do this to us, and they tear at us. And when we poll Americans, they just don't. It really doesn't matter. I mean, of course, Republicans will support voter ID at a higher rate than Democrats, but it's still a majority and a big majority. And of course, probably Hispanics and whites will support it more than Black and Asian, but it's still giant majorities. They're not really worth citing the disparity. It's statistically 5-6 points outside the margin of error is worth citing. But guys, I'm talking about the difference between 70 and 80. I'm not talking about 54 and 48, 42. It's crazy. They rip us apart. They do. No,
you know what? I have a question for you both. Biden's offering free beer for people getting vaccinated. So my big question is he going to require IDs?
Well, that's at Publix.
No, I'm serious.
If at Publix, Eric, you can get a free vaccine right now in the grocery store at Publix, but you got to give an ID. Is Walgreens discriminating? Is this vaccine discrimination? Vaccine suppression?
I want to be clear though. I think the Democrats are playing. It's obviously identity politics, right? Anything that they can use to say it's racism, right? And I get killed with this all the time, right? Because I do. If you guys don't know me, I do a lot of police breakdowns, and I just like to call it straight down the pipe. And Eric knows that I get killed, right? I'm called Uncle Tom when I say one thing, and then I'm called the great liberal maniac when I say something else. So because
that's why I bring him on. He's flypaper.
So I just. But the facts you can't deny, and the fact is that to not require. To not be able to identify your voter, it doesn't make sense. It is ridiculous. It absolutely is ridiculous. Of course, you got to identify the voter. Now, how they do it in New York is ridiculous. Like, for instance, when I tell people the story all the time, when I went to vote this time, right, in this election, I went to go vote. And the woman was like, "What's your name?" So I told her my name. She couldn't find it. She was like, "Oh, do you see your name?" She's like, "How do you spell it?" I pulled out my driver's license. Here it is. Here's my driver's license. It's spelled right there. So I don't have to keep spelling it to you. You can just see it. She freaked out like I pulled out a gun. No, put that away. Put the license away. Just tell me your name. Tell me your name.
Not the ID.
So I said, so I can just point to any name on this list? I said, I can point to any name on this list? She said, yeah, if it's you, I believe you. And I thought to myself at that point in time, this is ridiculous, right? They're just hoping that no one ever does like get smart and say, well, why don't we just get a whole bunch of people and just give any name we want? Because all you got to do is just pick a name that's not signed and that's your name. But I think the issue is it's all about framing. And I think the Democrats have framed this issue in a way where it's just like even you're talking about election integrity, right? And how in Fulton County and even in Miami, how in some of the counties, it happens to be like in the counties when you have more people, you're going to have more anomalies. So when people say that, and those happen to be urban areas, but now they all, since it's urban, it must be black. And you're like, no, it's just, we're talking about size and scale. If you only got 2 people voting, that's different than if I got 1 million people voting in a county, then we're going to see more problems. And that's what I'm talking about. But we have to detach the voting issue from a race issue. And I understand they're intertwined with the history of the country, and we do understand that. But today, I think those issues are 2 separate issues that are just commingled for a political purpose.
Nate, Republicans walk right into that. Republicans walk right into that all the time. They're stupid. They are, because it's not just those. But I'll let you go, Eric. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. This super chat, I think, almost nails what you guys are saying right in it. While the facts support it, do you think the idea brought forth by Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter that voter ID is being used for political reasons, both sides playing off the racist card?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I think we agree on that. And let me ask Nate a question on this, because I think that they'll keep going with what that super chatter said. They'll keep going if we don't stop this, and both sides will keep playing off it. Would you give, because this is some of us are trying to come up and devise ways where you can verify an absentee ballot, or you can prove where you are. If we put a fingerprint on our Apple phone, Nate, to open the phone, or our iMac, would you be willing to give, or when we're born, by the way, we give a print, would you be willing to use a very easy 6-point match fingerprint to be able to verify who you are before you vote? Because honestly, a lot of us, you would. I really, I got to tell you, and you would too, Eric.
Sure,
guys, that would
make it like ATM machines. You can go right to the voter machine.
You said 6 point, right? So technically, that's not enough to convict somebody.
Exactly.
But
we don't want to be over strenuous.
Rule you out. So yeah,
it's
that's
exactly fair. Yes. It not 6 points, because we don't want to be over. We don't want to be overzealous here. But we want to be, I got to tell you, it was in the Army and, during the era of George W. Bush and the nation building operations, it was like standard. Yeah. And you're working with international, or you were working with international communities. And I remember what the U.S. did. It was like the purple finger. And it was dye that didn't come off for 48 hours. You put your fingerprint down on it. It's funny because Iran did it too, but they still could manage to rig elections. It was incredible, because who cares if nobody's really
there's a gun to your head. You know which way to vote. Yeah, put the finger there. That's cool.
I felt like it's 99% of the vote.
But Ahmadinejad is won again. But honestly, it would probably solve. It blows my mind. Like Nate said, we can go to the moon. We have all this technology, but we can't secure the vote and make everybody feel good about it. And I feel like 90%, more than feel like, we've been polling this for a while now, our elections would be more credible if we had a system like this in place. The truth is, like that commenter said, Republicans would love voter ID as a cudgel forever. They would, and Democrats love the idea of voter fraud, period, because it helps them. I think built in the argument, it helps them for a couple of reasons. One, it demoralizes the right. In Georgia, Democrats did not win. Republicans lost. I polled that 3 times, and Nate, there were people in Central Georgia who voted for Donald Trump who were telling us, because of the Lynn Woods of the world, and not just him, but I'm using him as an example because he was so prominent with it. But the machine is just going to rig my vote. It's just going to take my vote. I'm staying home. That's how they lost that election. And I'm telling you, it was demoralization, and it helps the left simply to have it in the debate. It would be much better for our self-governing society to simply have a system like this that takes human error completely out of it. So we still, even with signature verification, my signature doesn't look all that great in Florida either, Nate. I signed that years ago, and my R is different now. It is. So like, you look at some of this and you're wondering to yourself, what is really needed to preserve integrity, and what is taking this human element right out of it. Our fingerprints will never change. And as long as we don't have an overly strict standard, that's the only way forward for verifying ballots and identity. I'm telling you. Thought a lot about
starting
this.
to get a little wigged out on the fingerprint identification, and that's why I did say,
I know that. I get that.
6 is not enough to identify somebody to actually prosecute. Nate, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you need at like 14 points of comparison for a fingerprint to be used.
I'm generally not a fingerprint expert. I usually but I don't know.
But it's 6 is enough to rule probability.
Exactly.
It's more likely than not I'm this person that matches this number, because you can do it without putting an actual name in. But there's a way you could possibly do a registration with the finger metrics and just say boom, 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 and then you get a unique number, and not necessarily a user identifiable data, which can be hashed and separated.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thought you were finished. Okay. For example, like, let's say I want to do the fingerprint thing for brevity and speed. Like, I could just walk up to there and go beep, 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 and stick my finger on it, move on, and move out. Now, I can go register to vote, show my ID. I like the ID at the time. And then they can confirm, yes, he is this, legitimate person. I marked somewhere in the poll that Eric did actually come in and show up, and he's a person, and he was given a number. I don't know what the number is. All I know is that he's somewhere in the system with some number somewhere. And that's a way to make it even more anonymous at the same time.
Yeah, it's a hash you're talking about.
Yep. And
it's a hash.
Battery is going to run out on me.
Yeah.
Hashing.
What? Oh, give me a second. I know how to fix that. 1 second.
I will say,
use AC.
I know. I understand. There's a lot of people who don't, who feel uncomfortable giving the government your fingerprint, even though they more likely have it already. But I do want to say this: we have the technology now and the capability to put, instead of putting ballot boxes randomly in places, those can be machines that you go up to, you put your finger on, they know who you are, you cast your vote, and you're done. We have the ability to do something like that, right?
Now the software could be hacked, though. That is technically a problem.
Well, but obviously, if you put a system in place where you can put it where you put it in a building, and you have security around it and stuff like that, and so it's just not out there. Just like ATMs can be hacked. But when's the last time you heard of an ATM being hacked, right? So I think we have the ability to do this, but do we have the will to do this? And I think that's the issue.
Yeah, and we're polling that now, Nate, to see. I mean, a lot of people are the most skeptical they are is internet voting, period. So they don't like that at all. That's number one. Paper ballots, a majority of the country wishes that we would go back to, and I think Republicans have an opportunity here, but they don't have the political courage to do it. So people would rather just providing more polling places where you could go and vote during an extended period of time in person by paper ballot. And like Eric, you were saying, you show up, you have your ID. That is the preferred way so far that we are seeing people in our polling. There is work to be done on convincing people about the fingerprint, but when it comes to absentee ballot, if we're going to keep that as a way to vote, that is the only way. I really have to tell people, like, I think Nate, you just said it. They got it anyway, folks. I got news for you. You put your piggy when you were born. You came out. You put your piggy on a piece of paper. Your mama let him have it anyway. So there's some identifying figure for you when you go to get a job. In many cases, what you need a fingerprint, background check, you need a blood test, right? Make sure you're not, huffing paint and on your lunch break, whatever it may be. They're doing this already. I joined the Army. What I have to do, I just said everything, right? Years ago. They probably do it to pass the bar.
Even a urine example, urine sample, right? Like when I got the job at the DA, they got urine, they
asked you for right. Absolutely. I mean, guys, it's not as scary as it sounds. And if you want to secure the vote absentee, there's no other way to do it. Otherwise, you are relying on, and the left needs to see this, needs to understand this as well. It's not the right just talking about Fulton County, for instance, right? Yeah. It's the left talking about Bay County, for instance. So in Florida, very Republican, 40,000 net votes out of Florida every year. Do you trust the officials at Bay County to make sure that vote matches? Or would you rather everybody just be on the up and up and do it? Right. So for me, because of where this is going to go, I see this as such a danger. This could break our republic. This could really do this. Once half or a quarter, a third, whatever it may be, of the population believes that the system no longer works for them, that it's rigged. They elected a president, and you brought this up, Nate, 4 years ago. He stole it. We have to deny his duly elected right to govern. They didn't get a presidency out of their win. They barely got 2 years out of their congressional win, and the system moved to block his agenda, to block everything. And then 4 years later, they view that it was robbed from him. He's an incumbent who receives the most votes ever, and he loses. I mean, that's never happened in the history of our republic, ever. Not ever. And now you have this growing number of people. Even 35% of Democrats in Georgia told us they believe that Georgia went to Donald Trump, that it was robbed. They don't care, though, because they're like, we'll take the W. They really don't care. That's scary, because eventually one sector of the population is going to say, this doesn't work anymore. We need to resort to something else. And that's what I'm afraid of. So for me, it's worth the fingerprint. You can have it.
That's what always tears down democracies, right? When people don't have faith in the democracy, the democracy,
it's the credibility.
Vote. Yeah,
that's right.
So, right, but again, but now I think because the problem with our voting system is that it is not a federal election system. It is thousands of different jurisdictions, and you do it one way in Nebraska versus one way in you then have to get the political will to nationalize this thing, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about one standard for everyone and make it very secure, not these, this hodgepodge of different systems all over the place. Like I know there's the first county in, I think, Maine or something like that, where they still go to the church and fill out the ballots, and somebody counts them in the church that night, and they tell you who they voted for. Do you think we can ever get the political will to because that's essentially what you're talking about, nationalizing the voting standards, and then legally, how do you sell that to people?
Well, I've been trying to do this at a state by state level, so state standardization, and because the Constitution gives the power to the states with some extent. You're the lawyer, with some exceptions. I think they were talking more about. I think they foresaw that there would be problems with civil rights issues, and I think that's where
weed is rolling out state by state.
Yeah. So we're trying to go state by state with it. Some people are being more open than others, I would say. And then it's funny, just for Republicans out there, we have a lot of red legislatures talking to us, and their governors won't sign it. So it's crazy because they're afraid. They're afraid. I don't know what they're afraid of. The media, the corporations, I don't know. They're afraid. But so they're trying to move to referendum to do it. I would be afraid to give it to the federal government. Honestly, I would. I think it's just a monumental task we have ahead of us. And I think that it can be done, though, Nate, because everybody moved the states. It wasn't a national, legislation that did it. People move the states in different directions with how to conduct elections in the past, where you even have states like Utah that do 100% vote by mail and have, I just saw that on the screen, and have what liberals would love in a red state like Utah. So it can be done. It's just going to take a lot of time. And again, I understand everyone's, because I see the comments, I understand everyone's issue with biometrics, or we're not, Eric and I, we're just saying it's 6 point. I'm not talking about here's your eyeball, get your optical reading and a DNA
or even really anything
that's
6 point useful.
Match. Yeah, you're right. Like if you were to open your iPhone right now, folks, or your Samsung is now doing it too, they could. What is stopping Apple from just giving the government that? I mean, they could do it whenever they want. In fact, they comply with them all the time. Right. So I think you're looking for security you don't really have. I think you're defending security that you don't have at this moment. It's like a false sense of privacy.
We can remove the fingerprint and just do facial recognition, right? With your iPhone, right? You like there are other ways
Face
to do
ID.
This. Yeah.
Face ID.
Okay, really quickly.
That scared the hell out of everybody. I was thinking, fingerprints, we're all used to giving them up already, but go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say earlier you were talking about how you were hopeful, Rich.
I am.
And I was going to say that I'm actually optimistic too, because I still have a green dollar sign. I may well be erasing it now. I don't know. I've got a super chat in here. I'm going to go really fast on it. And it's Navarro reports. It's been asked about 8 times in the chat, I think. What are the Navarro reports?
In fact,
can you educate Nate? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the Navarro report. The problem is corrupt officials. Yeah, I mean,
Agreed.
This is what we found. Honestly, what we found this time, which is why to Nate I say it. What I can tell you is that I can tell you there is enough statistically to show that it did, or at least to question who the legitimate winner is. I can say that. I know I can. What I can't tell you is who the official winner is, because I don't know who those people voted for. But I can say this. Nobody gave us a hard time when we were trying. It was the disruption was disproportionate to one side. You understand what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
And it was. So how could Kent County, a supposed red county that did flip to Joe Biden, this guy? Because we did more than just count votes. We looked into, so who is the county clerk? Who's the registrar over there? And we found he was, you guys love him, a very country club Republican white guy, entitled. He's so happy. He's got his bio. He belongs to this club and that club and this club and that. Hated Donald Trump. All over his social media, hated him to death and would have done anything to stop him from being reelected. So here is this guy. Yeah, look, that's what I'm saying. There were Mitt Romneys everywhere. So Donald Trump's enemy was not just Democrats in urban areas. Like Nate was saying, that's a major mistake for Republicans to focus on that, because one, you just look racist. You look like you're targeting minorities. End of story. And the problem was not just there. It was everywhere. Robert set this. He really pointed me in the right direction, because I couldn't find a correlation. And he's like, dude, just go county by county and look at the difference with these anomalies and these people you're calling. Just look and see if there's a correlation between the percentage of vote by mail. I don't know why I didn't think. I was so tired. I don't know why I didn't think of that ahead of time. So we started to go outside of battleground states, Delaware, Tennessee, all of these different, and that was it. So here we have statistically similar demographics, all the same across the board. They never vote. That, the vote year to year does not vary much between them. There are Appalachia counties that back up against each other. For instance, perfect example, counties in Iowa and Wisconsin, so close, mirror each other. And the only difference was the percentage of vote by mail. And that is a red flag. You understand what I'm saying? So we know this early vote comes in. We know what the early in-person vote is. We know what the early election day vote is. We have the break, and I mean that by the margin. We have the margin for each candidate in different areas. It doesn't make sense that the later vote that ended up in those precincts, maybe in the middle of the night or later at night or whatever it may be, they should still mirror the other mail-in voting that happen in the same areas. They should not vary that much. And I don't mean that, folks, like those line charts you see on Twitter. It does happen that Democrats get 95% of votes in precincts in Philadelphia. That is what's wrong with those line charts you see on Twitter, guys. It's statistically impossible for this much vote to shift. That is not true. Votes can shift like that because precincts.
Well, I wanted to ask one question. What about the political piece to that? And what I mean by that is, I remember there was a time where Donald Trump, he and the Republican position was vote by mail, don't vote by mail, right? Don't vote by mail, don't vote by mail. And the Democrats were saying, go vote by mail, right? Trump was saying, don't do it, it's wrong, go do it, and it's right. So just with that, if you're telling your base not to go vote by mail, I'm assuming that they would be less likely to go. So when you saw like election day, it was heavily Republican. There were more Republicans going because they voted in person versus voting by mail. Did that factor into the analysis that, hey, you just have more Democrats voting by mail because because of the way they was being promoted?
Yeah, without a doubt. And that, I think, is what some of those people miss when they did those little statistical models on Twitter with the line charts. You remember them? And it's 850, now it's 910, right? That's what they miss. So even in Florida, where we were talking about before, that the mail-in vote used to be heavily Republican.
Yeah.
Donald Trump and Republicans, really Donald Trump, he broke like more than a decade worth of history, Nate. I mean, it was in-person voting started to get more heavily Republican leading up to election day. And then election day was just overwhelmingly Republican.
It was all Republican,
Yeah, and we did see that because we were asking people in our polling. We knew this was going to happen. We were asking people, what is, your vote intention, basically. Do you intend to vote early? Okay, so in person, by mail. Some places didn't have in person, but still had by mail. And so we expected that. And I think that's a lot of the political analysts, like the Nate Silvers of the world, they were totally knocked on their butts in places like Florida because they weren't seeing that happening. We did. So it did factor into it. And here's another thing that raises my eyebrow right off the jump. 6 states made certain changes to make those verification procedures more difficult, while the rest of the battleground states did not. And in the battleground states that basically remained more, I don't want to use the word strict because that's not like a legal definition. It's not the right definition. The prior standard.
They didn't change their standards. They didn't change their
exactly.
Standards. Yeah.
And Florida still kept their integrity deadlines. You're not allowed to hand in a ballot 3 days later. I mean, there's certain things that Florida is a gold standard. I really do believe that. I love my state. I believe it. Yeah. But in those 6 states, a funny thing happened. Donald Trump's election day margin didn't overtake the vote by mail because the vote by mail kept just trickling. And that was not the case in the states where they didn't go above and beyond 3 days stamps, give the benefit to the signator instead of strict application of verification. That to me, it's like one more thing that just doesn't really make sense. Arizona, Maricopa, there's that audit there now. That wasn't even the majority of the problem. They're auditing Maricopa because there's 2.1 million votes there. They're not auditing it because that was the problem area. The problem area was Apache in a red county, Cochise. That was the problem. And so people should understand this does go a little bit both ways. All right. Yeah. I mean, they really should get this. That Maricopa, they're hoping to find 6,000 votes. Because it's 2.1 million. So they're hoping to show that the result is not legitimate. And that isn't even the majority of the problem. Apache's still a big county, but they were the ones who were, when we do this, Nate, we call up and we say, how many votes do you have as of now outstanding? Vote by mail. We were getting responses this time that the AP would never have accepted in any other election cycle. So it's 3 o'clock in the morning. We're done counting votes tonight. I'm finished. We're all finished. We're closing up shop. We have 170,000 ballots. And then 3 hours later, the lights are back on. We're getting reports. The lights are actually on. They didn't go home. It looks like they drove around the block a few times. And by the way, there's 210,000 ballots. It's just crazy. We never saw. There's always going to be disparities. Elections aren't perfect, but this was just nuts. This was like the Wild West. And I'm telling you, without that kind of accountability, it's not only possible to inject illegal votes into the system, it's easy, especially if you've been planning for it for 30, 60 days.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely.
We just can't do that again.
It's one of the things I do find it to be, it's laughable because I expected this election to be probably one of the least secure elections in the history of the U.S. And that's just because of the mail-in vote. Obviously, when you give
without a doubt,
it's going to be less secure. And I think that's just any common person would understand. But it wasn't at the Trump administration's own, wasn't it his homeland security. This is the most secure election in history. But what I'm saying is that when you have that someone saying that from that side, right, in the administration, right, this is the most secure election in the history of elections, it's going to be harder now to try to institute changes because that's what people are going to point to. Trump's own guy said that, right? I honestly believe that. When it's funny because when he even said that, I was like, well, that just doesn't make any sense because mail and obviously signature verification. Those are the two this can't be the most secure. You know, how do we know the Russians? And I'm just using Russians for anybody. But how do we know they didn't send 6,000 ballots of dead people? You know, we don't know. You know, we don't know, or people who they know that aren't going to vote. Right? You know, people who haven't voted, who've maybe registered, or they could just register people blindly.
I'd rather blame Canada. Is Viva on the
Canada, yeah.
They were taking shots at us bad. Did you see that? We can manage to count our votes.
but I think the key point here, though, for all of this stuff is that unless we do something to make the vote more secure and make people confident that when they vote, it's not going to be diluted by 20 other fake votes or anything like that, that is where we want to move to. And I think right now, no matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, because don't forget, for the Democrats out there, 4 years ago, you guys were the ones saying the Russians, vote's no good, you know, everything is bad. And now with your guy won, it's everything is good, it's the most secure ever. It doesn't work that way. There are problems, and those problems are long lasting. We need to solve those problems. Or in 4 years, if your guy loses, we're going to have the other side saying, and instead of Rich being here, I'm going to be here with a Democrat say, oh, this was the election was stolen. No, my God, no, it wasn't. You know,
and Nate, you'd agree we can't survive like this. Every
absolutely
4 years. Every 4 years, because that's what I was talking about. People, I think, mistake that like I'm defending Donald Trump. I'm defending our system. You can't have 4 years. Donald Trump is, a traitor, and he stole the election with Vladimir Putin. 4 years later, the right screaming Joe Biden's illegitimate. He stole the election. You can't survive like this. It's supposed to be a self-governing society. Your side loses, your side wins sometimes, but we all agree it was legitimate. The government is credible. It has regime credibility, and we all move forward. This is where we're going right now is bad. It's bad.
In the chat, Canadian Parliament just rejected mail-in ballot clause in election proposal over 300 to 1.
We look so ridiculous.
No, nobody's going to learn anything. All right, well, folks,
so ridiculous.
Awesome. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. I've still got a green dollar sign, and really, to me, this is like the perfect example of, no, it was not billed to be a debate, it's billed to be a discussion, quite literally a discussion. I'm not into battling. I think everybody here is leaving with more to think about. I don't know if any positions have changed or whatever, but this is worth exploring. And I think all of us agree that, yes, Joe Biden is president of the United States. Nobody is questioning that Joe Biden is president of the United States. We were just doing a post-mortem. That's why I labeled it as such. Yes, I'm tap dancing for algorithmic control, but I'm being realistic, and I just wanted to get it out there. Folks, peoplespundit.locals.com is where you can support Rich Baris. He's going to be doing more and more and more on locals. And you can always go to unstructured.locals.com. You can go, Nate doesn't have anything, so why bother? No,
Nate the lawyer. Just Google Nate the lawyer, and you'll see. I'll come up.
I'm gonna go follow him right now, actually, on Twitter.
He has a fantastic YouTube channel. He really does, and I'm pushing Nate to get on locals as well, because Nate, all of his videos get demonetized, etc. I'm sitting here watching a dollar sign, trying to see if I'm going to be. Rich is he's kicked off of Twitter. His wife is off. One of his companies is off. He's barely hanging on.
I'm back on Twitter because of Tucker Carlson.
Only because that's 1 year account.
My wife heard that and she went, I'm not. She's still not.
Jack Dorsey's a punk.
Jack Dorsey has not relieved her out of Twitter. Everybody's laughing.
So, folks, it does make a difference. Going to locals, please support us. You don't have to pay, but help us build an audience and get the conversation going, because, we are hanging by a thread. My channel was nuked in February, completely taken off. Nate's one video away from saying the wrong cop thing. We really don't know. So that kind of thing does help. So
to show you how bad it is that remember the video that I had that blew up about the fake the soccer, the U.S. women's soccer. Their lies about equal their lies. So that blew up when that video first started. Right. They thought it was. It seemed like the system thought it was pro, because I had the title was like pro U.S. women's soccer, pro equal rights.
I'm for them.
It was like my cost per mule was like $20. But then when people started watching it, and I think it was the people who were watching it, more conservatives, they were going to say, oh, of course these were all lies. It dropped from like $20 to like $3. still green, $3 on a 700,000 view video. It was ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
But you know what it showed me? It showed me that if you're going to do videos like that, you have to be careful because those videos blow up. But they like that's telling me you can't make money that way. You can't think, and that video was just pure facts. I literally just read the court case, and that video was $3. So it is what it is. It's
get on locals, then, Nate.
I got to get on locals, right?
You got to get. Can I just tell, because you're talking about really a censorship. Let me just say this, and that's why I'm optimistic and to give everybody hope here. But it also shows you that Republicans and like free speech advocates are not doing their job well, because we're polling all over. And we're asking people all these different questions. This is a liberal district in California. We asked them this. Given everything that you might have heard about political correctness, social media bans, and what is called cancel culture, which would you say comes closer to your views? 55.4% in a liberal district in California, we're polling for someone right now, said they are too often used to crush dissenting views and represent a grave threat to free speech rights. Only 26 said they are largely to ensure a civil society and free speech should be limited if it hurts someone's feelings or violates terms of use. So the majority of even liberals, it's just that we're not talking to each other. And it's like that they have us yelling at each other. You know what I'm saying? They have us yelling at each other, and we're not getting across how much I think we share because they want us fighting. I really believe that in my heart of hearts. No, and their nightmare day is when we talk.
Like you said, like this, I think this stream is a microcosm of that because we agree with everything. It's just, but I think they want us to they want me to be here and say, oh, that's racist. And they want you to say, we want voter ID for us to be battling out instead of us coming together and say, you know what, that makes sense. Like everything you just said makes sense. And it makes sense. And so, but again, it's because if it bleeds, it leads. And we're not bleeding that. So that's what the media is about.
Perfect. Amen. On that note, everybody, please subscribe, please follow, please hang about, and thank you.